All right. So you started in 2022 and 2022. And what's it been like?
So, I guess I have to go back to the pandemic time. And I just remember the restaurants being closed and how hard it was for them. And we would make a plan and we were going to go drive up to a restaurant and somebody's going to run out with the bag and we'd get those adult Capri Suns, do you remember? And come home and just eat and just feel like, okay, we have to do something to support the local people. So time passes, we come out of the pandemic, and there are things really happening in Fairport. And we'll get into that in like just a little bit. But as my husband and I were going out to eat at places, I just felt like I needed to remember what I was eating that I really liked. So started this page just taking pictures, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know like when I put a hashtag, like what power that actually had for me. And then it was probably October of 2022. I remember going out to breakfast. It was Columbus Day. I was off from school. And I said, there's 100 followers. I have 100 followers. Like, I can't believe there's 100 people who are interested in this. So, and from there I started to become a little bit more intentional. But my process was we'd go out to eat and, I'd take pictures, take some notes, and then I'd just leave a sticker. And I wouldn't tell them like who I was. I'm not a food critic, but I just, so maybe if somebody was paying attention, a couple of days later, they'd see a post and they would kind of connect the two together. So I fast forward till I think it was about April of 2023. There was a local artist. Her name is Lorraine Staunch. And she was at one of the local restaurants. I recognized her from Instagram. And if you go to Fairport, there's so many restaurants and locations, like stores and stuff, that have Lorraine's artwork out. Like she is incredible. So I walked up to her. She was at the bar, and I introduced myself, and I gave her a sticker. And a few days later, I got a phone call from the Merchants Association asking me to come in and talk about what I'm doing. And then at that point, I have like 800 followers. So now I think, okay, let's see what happens. And from there, it's just sort of been, instead of me going in down on the down low, I'm going in, I'm letting them know I'm coming, or maybe I'm introducing myself right off the bat. And just we're having an exchange. I'm learning more and more about the community and who's working there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It really is interesting, the world of like food promotion, restaurant promotion on social media, because there are places that have, people have reached out to me that I'm like, how the hell did you ever find out? How did you hear about me? Or there's like, I don't know if you get this at all, but sometimes like I'll go into a restaurant or I'll be out and like people like are staring at me in a weird way. And I'm like, I don't recognize you. I was just at dinner. Actually, we went to Tully's the other night with my wife, and I have a 15-month-old. So it was his second restaurant experience, and the first one didn't go so well. And but we went back to Tully's, and I'm sitting there waiting for them, and this guy walks in and just walks right up to my table. He's like, "Hey, how are you doing?" It's like, "Good. How are you?" He's like, "Good." He's like, "Yeah, I saw you went here the other day." I was like, yeah.
Creepy.
I was like, who are you?
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I follow you on Instagram." I was like, "Oh, thank you. Appreciate that." But so it's still strange for that kind of stuff.
I feel like I encounter the same thing. So we'll go to, I don't know, a bar, a restaurant, and I'll start with, "Oh, here's my sticker, and I'm from." Oh no, I follow you already.
Oh,
I
cool.
moved back to the area, and I like found you right away. So now I know where to go, and that's happened several times. Like,
That's cool.
The fact that somebody follows me, like I just can't believe it. But one thing that's different is I don't put my face on the Instagram. Like it's really about the restaurant. It's about the food. It's about the experience. It's not about Christine eating out.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing like what I'm seeing and how much I really appreciate it. But there's 0 pictures of me on the Instagram page.
Okay.
So
Yeah. I really haven't, except for stories. I didn't start doing it until last year when we moved more into video than just, pictures. And, it felt really dumb. I felt like, really stupid for a while doing it. Now it's more difficult. I get more like embarrassed if I'm going to set a camera up here in the studio and record a video and it's just me and the camera than I do if I'm, out in front of a restaurant with somebody. And so, so I just, for a while I felt stupid. I thought it was going to be, really dumb. And then friends started like kind of poking fun at me a little bit. And that made it more like easier for me to do it. But it is, I don't know. It's a kind of a weird thing because I don't like, there are some cases where I talked to some of the local journalists about this from time to time. It is weird to know that you have the power to like drive business to a restaurant, and then like a sort of feeling of sort of a responsibility to do that, or to do it to a certain degree. There's some restaurants that I post and like they might get flooded with business and then others they don't. And I don't know why, I wish I did. Cause I just make it happen all the time where they get flooded with business. But
I feel like I've noticed that as well. There was one place that opened up at the end of December, right in the village of Fairport, and it's called Tonier's. And, they had very few followers. They didn't do much with Instagram leading up to their opening. And I thought, that's kind of a missed opportunity. So when we went in, we did our thing. We were there with my stepdaughter, her boyfriend, and so we had 4 different meals. And after I posted that, I kind of was curious, like, what is this impact going to have on the business? And I started watching their follower count.
Yeah.
And I think I kept texting my husband during the day, like, could you believe they got this many more followers? I think it's because of me. Like,
yeah.
So it's meaningful. Like, you do have an impact on their business. So that was kind of exciting to see.
Oh, yeah. There's some restaurants I'll screenshot right before I make the post. I'll screenshot their profile so I can remember what that number, like what they're, because, not to be conceited about it, but I think some of us, like, we kind of have to be self-centered a little bit to do this. But, and people like me are more self-centered than other people who do it. But I do want to say, like, those are my successes, I feel like. And that's not something I, like, broadcast out. Like, hey, I made this post and now they got 100 new followers. But internally, it's like, all right, job well done. I did, check that one off the list. Now let's go find another one. It's really impactful, meaningful to me to see their follower count go up if I made a post about them, or to hear that they sold a bunch of food. There's a restaurant we went to lunch last year, and we weren't going in to make a video or do a post. We were just going to get lunch. And when we walked in, the restaurant owner was like, "Oh, I've been waiting for you to come in. I was wondering when you were going to be here. We're so excited. I can't wait to see the post when it comes out." And I was like, I don't want to pull out my camera right now. I just want to come here and have lunch and go back to work.
Right.
But I was like, all right, I guess we have to do a post. So it was the dumbest. It was not a good video. It was just, the food was great, but it was just like, hey, I'm here at this restaurant. I'm having lunch. I think it's really delicious. You should come check it out. Goodbye. And then like 2 weeks later, I had the owner on the podcast, and she was like, we sold 6 cases. It was like their chicken wings that we did. She's like, we sold 6 cases of those chicken wings the day after you made that video. I was like, holy cow, that's amazing. So stuff like that makes me.
Yeah. You have like a responsibility to do right by these small restaurants because they're kind of counting on you, you know? And you're reaching people that may not have ever gone there before. Just by you sharing your experience, it brings them new customers, new life to the business. But I do feel like it is kind of cool when you find out that you touch them in some way and it's in a positive way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think you and I kind of have the same approach in that is we don't post negative things about restaurants.
Never.
So why, like, what made you, and was there a time when you started the account or over the last 2 years that you were like, had to make a decision on if you were going to maybe not post something about a restaurant or?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of one place in particular, and we posted, and here's what I ate. Mm-hmm. I'm not raving about it, but like, here it is, and here's the plate, and it just kind of left it at that.
Yeah.
But when I really like something, like, I'll tell you I really like it. But I will never ever like say it was awful. Because if it was really awful, I wouldn't post it at all.
Right.
I would just leave it out. Service is the same thing. It's hit or miss. Mostly it's hit. Like you're going to find good service, but hey, people have a bad night.
Yeah.
You know, staffing might not be there. There's something going on in the kitchen. Like you just don't know the other factors. And that's not a reason to slam a whole restaurant because of one bad service experience. Like that's not really indicative of what they can do.
Yeah, without a doubt. Do you have a rule of like, I'll go to a place of like a certain amount of times before you post about them?
No, I mean, we've gone to places that we just go the first time and we'll post about them. And I try to spread going back to certain places, but I do have certain places that I really like. So I might go back and not post about them because I feel like I'm giving them so much attention and other people, like I want to give them attention as well.
Yeah.
You know, Fairport is a small community, but the restaurant scene is growing, like exploding. And there's more opening up. There's more locations that could be filled by restaurants. So, we've got a lot of work coming up.
Yeah. Fairport does remind me of Baldwinsville a little bit. Baldwinsville here is like out towards the west and really small village. It's got a really big high school. It doesn't have like the college scene that Fairport does, but really big high school. But I think there's 22 restaurants and it's a smaller space than Fairport. But these 22 restaurants that are there all thrive. They all do incredibly well. And I'm fortunate enough to be in the text thread with all of the restaurant owners. And they all help each other out. They'll text each other, hey, I'm thinking about doing this event. Does anybody else want to participate? Or, you know, hey, the power's out over here. How's everybody else doing over there? That sort of stuff. So it's really cool to see that. And that's kind of the same feeling I get from Fairport.
I mean, in talking to the restaurant owners, just having separate conversations, they all come to me with the same perspective that everybody is, you know, there's camaraderie there. They're helping each other. They're giving each other pointers about maybe, you know, what are good times for maybe showing a football game, or maybe don't open during that time because you're not going to get that many sales. You're not going to turn over tables as quickly as you would want to. They do share a lot of information. They help each other. If there's somebody who wants to book a private party, can't do it at this location, they'll send them somewhere else. You know, they just really work together, and they don't see another restaurant coming in as cutting into their business, because there's a lot of business to be had.
Yeah.
And some of them, what we've noticed is they've spread out and now have like multiple businesses in Fairport, because like the piece of the pie, like they can just keep getting from that pie.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, I mean, I just started going really intentionally out west and, you know, outside of central New York last year. And I think, did I go to, I'd gone to Rochester a couple times before hitting Fairport, but we connected with Junction 361 first, and in there talking to Gabe, hanging out. We did a couple videos, and then just talking to him about kind of our intention of being in Rochester. And he brought me over to, it's not the Chamber of Commerce, I forget what it's called.
Probably the Merchants Association, yes.
Brought me over there and introduced me to them, and then we were there for 30 minutes talking, and, you know, they were telling me about all the events and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, it's pretty interesting because Rochester has a great food scene, 1,000 times better than Syracuse. And the Instagrammers, though, and like the food promoters in Rochester, like specifically Rochester, aren't really there. I mean, there's a couple, but there were a few big accounts that I've followed, but they've moved on. You know, I know there was one woman who had sriracha or whatever it was, sriracha or something like that, play on sriracha in Rochester.
Oh, I think they moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So that account's gone. I'm friends with a couple, Sip and Savor Rock and Feed Me Rock, and we did some stuff with them with the Beef Council last year. And they have good accounts, and they're somewhat active, but it's obviously not like their main focus, although they're both really great at what they do. I think his name's Jason. He has kind of a big account, but he doesn't really post at all. And so that surprised me. I thought that there was, when going to Rochester, I'd run into 10 times as many Instagrammers out there that had much larger followings, but I didn't find that. And then finding your account in Fairmount, I was like, in Fairport, I was like, oh, this is great. You know, there's somebody else is posting about great restaurants in Fairport that I can kind of see, you know, what's popular and what's good.
I mean, I try to make the stories, I try to post regularly, like 2-3 times a week, put something on stories almost every day. And sometimes my stories are just reposting things at the restaurants. They might send me like, hey, I've got this promotion going on. So I'll repost it to my stories so that way it can, spread the word a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I find like you do have to be active with it in order to grow and, and really care about it, give it the time and attention. And it also helps to have a community that there's a lot of material there.
Yeah.
There between the events, the different, just the location on the canal, and then the restaurants opening. There's so much going on. They also support a lot of local businesses there, small businesses. So you'll often find like a tie-in with maybe a small business and the restaurant, and they try to connect. And I like to call that when locals collide.
Yeah.
So, like you went to Junction 361, their bread is from Amazing Grains Bakery. So that's right in Fairport as well. They'll sell beer from Trip Hammer. That's also in Fairport as well. I mean, we have a big craft brewery scene in Fairport. So you'll see like those products in other restaurants. We have Iron Smoke Distillery.
Yeah.
Iron Smoke, you'll see their cocktails like all over the place. So supporting each other, it's not just me supporting them, but they also connect with each other.
Yeah. I reached out to Iron Smoke earlier, maybe in November, and I was hoping to get in there and like do a little video. And I forget the person I was communicating with, and that trip it didn't work out, but I have to reach back out. And then there's the newer brewery that opened up late last year.
Preservation.
Yeah, Preservation. I've been trying to reach out to them. I was trying to reach out to them right when they opened to get out there and like do a small little story about them opening, because so I'm curious about your take on Instagram. And well, let me ask you that. So 2 years. Has it changed your? This sounds like maybe it's more than it has, but has it changed your life in any capacity? Where in the respect of looking at, like, my wife and I went out to dinner last night. Right, I had zero intention, and we never go out to dinner because we have a 15-month-old. I had zero intention of making an Instagram video or taking any photos or posting about it. I was just going to have dinner with my wife, which we never get to do, and then the general manager saw that I was there and walked over and said, "Oh, we want to, the kitchen wants to bring you our bacon flight for you to have as an appetizer on the house," which I'm very grateful for, and a great move on their part, right? My wife hates bacon, absolutely despises it, and she's one of the she just hates bacon. And not only was it just like a bacon flight, it was 6 pieces of like thick cut bacon on a 2x6 with industrial pipes, a metal clothesline, and each piece of bacon.
I think I've seen that on Instagram. Okay, yes.
And then they light rosemary on fire underneath, so it's smoldering and it's more bacon, and then it takes up the whole table. So now her and I are talking through these slabs of bacon. And they put it down, and she looked at me and she's like, "I hate this. This is awful." So for her, that almost ruins the night. And now I'm like, well, shit, now I have to take a picture of this. And I have to post about it at the very least on the stories.
Probably was your picture that I saw.
Maybe,
and thinking like, where's that bacon place?
Right,
because that looks pretty epic. I would love a bacon flight. That sounds
It was very
awesome.
Delicious. It was really, really good.
Yeah.
One of them was like this maple and brown sugar, and that was phenomenal. And so I liked it, but at the same time, it was just whatever. But so have you noticed that like your life changes in those regards, and instead of like, "Hey, honey, let's go to dinner," now it's like, "Hey, I have to go take a picture. Let's go here."
Very much so. I mean, breakfast, it could be lunch, it could be dinner. So we're not thinking anymore, "Oh, let's go to TGI Fridays." Like that's just kind of out of the question. I think that, we've decided we need to focus more on supporting local. I don't want my money to go to a corporation.
Right.
Even in Fairport, you have something like Redbird Market. There's small little mom and daughter own the market. They run it. There's a lot of local products in there. Shop there before you go shop at Wegmans.
Yeah.
Sorry to say, but you really think about those places first before you spend money. And somebody would say, well, it's a few dollars more. Yeah, it is. But you are putting somebody's kid in a soccer camp. You know, you are helping them pay for XYZ bill. It's staying local. That's local dollars. Like, I don't know what's happening in Wegmans and then their headquarters.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't really think about that too much. I mean, I think about it a little bit more when I think of like buying from Amazon. I mean, obviously going out to eat at a restaurant or anything like that, it's 100% local as much as we can, except I do still like Dunkin' Donuts coffee. But we shop at Wegmans and order in from Amazon. The challenge is, and I think there's more opportunity, there's more to choose from out in like Rochester and even Fairport than Syracuse has. But the thing that bothers me the most, and I try to help them as much as I can, but the thing that bothers me the most about local food service businesses is just the convenience factor. And even if it's just simple as like having a website or having a link to their website, we were just looking at a restaurant the other day, and I was trying to figure, because they started following me on Instagram, and I was like, and they said Central New York in their bio, and it was this really interesting restaurant. I was like, oh my God, where is this place? I have to go check them out. But it just said Central New York in their bio. And then when I went to their website, I could not find their address anywhere. And when I finally found it, they were in Albany. And I was like, well, that's not Central New York, first of all. Second of all, I was like, make it easier. Like put your website, or address up at the top. There's things like that really frustrates me about some local spots where you meet somebody. It's like, not to be mean, but they have no idea what they're doing.
It's a learning curve for them. And so I think that's where I fill a gap, because they might not do social media really well.
Right.
I don't think I'm an expert at it either, but I'm doing something for them that maybe they don't have time to do.
Yeah.
And so, and it's also they need to work on their website, and they need to do a little bit better on their communication, but it is a steep learning curve, especially for those restaurants that small family-owned business, and they're just trying to survive. So,
for sure. Yeah. I really wish, and I don't know if there's anything like this out in Fairport or Rochester, and I don't think there is in Syracuse, at least not that's widely known, but some sort of a like educational or resource center for, restaurants that are opening, because, there's so many that open and fail. And Syracuse, I mean, I don't even know what that number is. And in the 8 years I've been doing this, how many have gone out of business? But there's so many that fail. There's so many that I talk to who, they'll reach out and be like, hey, please come in and make a video. We could really use it. And I'll go in and sit down and talk with them for an hour. And, you come to find out they have no idea what they're doing in running any business, let alone a restaurant where they took out a $300,000 loan, to open it up. And I'm like, oh man, if someone could have gotten to you a few months before you opened and just taught you a few things, and like managing your books or buying your food at a lower cost and how to do that, or even just how to, market yourself. Websites oddly in 2024 with Apple Vision Pro coming out, the discussion is still websites, is still a little mind boggling to me. But, I've ran into 2 restaurant owners in the past like week who don't have a website, and they're on the verge of spending like $6,000 for a year to have a website built. And I'm like, hey, you don't need this tech heavy website for your diner. You need a page, and you can do it on GoDaddy yourself for like $200 for the whole year, and you'll be fine. And it's surprising to me how many people I still run into who just don't know that, and they waste so much money at that kind of stuff. So the question for you with that story is,
there's a question in there.
There's a question. Do you run into those situations where it's like equally as frustrating to you, where it's like, man, if you had just asked me, I could have helped you out here?
Yes. I mean, I feel like there's a degree of buildup that needs to happen before a restaurant opens. Some do it better than others. Like, for example, there's Bonnie and Clyde, which is coming to Fairport. So they already have a restaurant in the South Wedge of Rochester, and they do really well. It's called the Cub Room. So they're opening in Fairport, and it's in an old bank building. So this is like from 1910 historical building, and there's a great tie-in, like Bonnie and Clyde, the bank.
Cool.
It's natural. she's doing a great job of just like those little teasers inside. Here's the vault. Here's where the cocktail bar is going to be. And it's going to be a cocktail program like you've never seen before. Like that, it's just a little bit of time on Instagram and it pays off so much. So to not do it, you really feel like you're sort of missing the boat here.
Yeah.
You know, the Fairport Merchants Association, though, does really want to step in and try to help those newcomers. Cool. And they'll have meetings and they'll have like communication and they'll help promote the business. So I think they want to be active in the different restaurants and bars and stores and just kind of give them that extra support that they might not have on their own because they're too busy just trying to get through the day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, every owner, I've never met a restaurant owner who's like, man, I've got so much time on my hands and I don't know what to do. Most of them are just crazy busy with 1,000 other things. So do you ever run into those situations? I know, like, you've got the Instagram account, right? I mean, is there a business side to it where you're like helping restaurants or they can pay you to do marketing or help them promote things? Or is it just like, hey, I'm here to do this? And
I would love some more free meals.
Yeah.
Free meals are always okay. Once in a while we'll get a cocktail,
Yeah.
So once in a while we'll get approached with things like that. But I mean, mostly I'm not making money off of this. It would be great, but it's not there yet. I don't know if it will become that, but it also satisfies for me something about supporting the community. I'm a teacher, so I take care of the little ones during the day, and I really care about Fairport. So there's an intrinsic motivation for this, and you maybe feel the same way. Like, you're doing good at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. I do, but I also go back. Like I wrestle. I mean, so I do this full time. The business side is social media management for 7 or 8 restaurants in town, and that's how this whole thing started. Is I was doing that. I first moved back from Austin 8 years ago or 9 years ago, whatever it was, and as a side hustle, started doing social media management for restaurants, and then met a restaurant owner who just kind of what we were just talking about, like could cook really well. Friends told her, hey, you'd be great at this. You love doing it. You should quit your job and go open a restaurant. And, unfortunately she listened to them, and 6 months later was in a massive amount of debt and going out of business. And so a friend introduced me to her and said, you should just go in and see if you can help her. And I couldn't because she was like a week away from going out. But I left that meeting and I was thinking, I wish I had a way where I could just tell the 1,000 people right now, go in there and get 10 of them to show up and get dinner and, just help her out a little bit. And so like that week I was just tossing through, how do I do that? How could I do that? And I was like, well, I'll start an Instagram account. Maybe that'll do it. So that's how Eat Local, got started, was with that intention. And then over the 8 years, it's like, all right, well, how do I make money at this? How do I do this full time and devote myself to doing that, to trying to help restaurants, get more customers, and not trying to gouge anybody and like take a bunch of money from them and that kind of stuff. But how do I really make an impact while also, paying the bills? And I'm still trying to figure that out.
Well, I mean, and you're fortunate because you're Eat Local New York, like the whole state. You have the opportunity for a really big audience. I'm in Fairport, but I think what we want to do is make it more of a destination.
Yeah.
And it's really becoming that. So in Rochester, you have a couple of little neighborhoods that have bars and Easton Alexander, South Wedge, maybe University Ave or Park Ave. But now all of a sudden Fairport is this suburban location that people are coming to. And most of my followers are in Fairport, but I think what I want to do is get followers from outside of Fairport who look to me when they're coming to Fairport, like, where should I go?
Right.
With the canal there, we do have a lot of boaters during the summer. And there's many, you have Canal Days, you have the Fairport Music Festival, you have Oktoberfest. So there's things going on in the village all the time that bring in people from outside. So I think growing that to have more people find the page, that's, that would be ideal because it would help me. It would help the community.
For sure. I think accounts like yours, though, that are really hyper-focused on the area are in some ways a lot better than like mine, which is really broad because now I have to focus. I have to like try to put an equal amount of attention across the entire state. And, you know, I've been traveling this past year. I traveled more than ever before. And, you know, from Buffalo all through Rochester and down into Brooklyn and all over Manhattan. But that's impossible to like stay up to date on, on all of those. Or if I'm going to go to Rochester, like if I'm going to go to Fairport and make a video about Junction 361, what's the likelihood, because most of my followers come from Central New York, what's the likelihood any of them are getting in the car and driving an hour to Fairport? It's pretty slim, you know, whereas with your stuff, with, you know, being focused on Fairport, you have such a much greater opportunity to say like, hey, I'm in Fairport, the followers are in Fairport, you know, and make more of an impact when you make a post than I think I do. You know, unless the video just goes crazy bonkers, you know, which I don't have many that really go crazy. It's so much harder nowadays than it was 6 months ago. But
there's a lot of considerations into this, right? I mean, and for you, the sweat equity of traveling all around and trying to find, you know, that restaurant, that local that needs a little bit of attention. Yeah. I mean, at the same time, though, we've got to make some money supporting your family.
Right. Yeah.
You know, this is my little hobby.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, I mean, most of it is still a hobby. I still do stuff a lot, all the time for free, just because I'm like, hey, I want to scratch that creative itch, you know? I had one of the worst, New York. I kind of thought New York City was going to be easier to break into. It's not. It's very difficult. So I went down, so I was like on Instagram, planning a trip down there, messaging a bunch of restaurants, and some really big and some really small. And this one, I wasn't asking for anything. But this one big restaurant, I messaged and said, hey, I'm going to be in the city on Tuesday. I would love to come in and make a video that I can put on my channel. And their response was, hey, we looked at your engagement and your engagement is too low to qualify for a free meal. I was like, oh God. It's like I wasn't asking for that, but wow, did that just hurt? Thank you so much for doing that.
Well, you know, I'm originally from Long Island.
Oh, really?
So, I moved here in 2011.
Okay.
2011. So, and I have noticed that myself. I go back, I have family there, my son lives there. I feel like I can get more attention here than I would down there.
Yeah.
Like, I connected with you, and I'm here. I was on WROC last summer. They did an interview with me.
That's
like,
cool.
you know, you can just easily connect with people and push yourself forward. You know, it's what is it, like little fish, big pool, or, you know, that's how it feels.
Yeah.
And when you're down there, there's just so much happening. It's at a different pace.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I don't know if I could even want to move back there. It's nice to visit, but yeah.
We were just down there 2 weeks ago, I think. And I learned this really quickly. That was maybe my fourth visit in the past year. I've got family that lives in Rockland County, so it's not, you know, we're down in like Nyack area, you know, kind of often. But going into the city, this time was really difficult because I had this whole broad list of places I wanted to visit, from Queens to the Bronx to Lower East Side to Brooklyn and all over. And so we did that. And when we got down there, I was like looking, I had kind of the map out, like laid out of where we were going to go, but I didn't think of like the transportation and how long it was going to take.
I'm just getting exhausted listening to this story, just thinking about the transportation, but continue, go ahead.
So we went to, like, first we went to Queens first, and we went and got a bagel and this one place, Utopia Bagels, which is like phenomenal. And we went there and we're sitting there and I'm like, all right, well now we want to go to Arthur Ave. And I was like, so me and my buddy are sitting there and I'm like, all right, how are we going to get to Arthur Ave? And I pull up the map and I'm looking online. I'm like, all right, the train's going to take 2 hours. And we're going to have to like jump 4 different trains, or we jump in an Uber. We'll be there in 45 minutes. All right, let's take the Uber. So we take the Uber over to Arthur Ave at 10 in the morning. There's not much to do on Arthur Avenue. So especially when you're not hungry. And so then it's like, all right, well, we want to go up to North Bronx, up to G. So we walk to G&R Deli and through the backside of the Bronx Zoo. And as we're walking up there, my brother who lives down there calls me. He's like, "Where are you?" He was like, "Oh, we're walking through this neighborhood." He's like, "What the hell are you doing walking in that neighborhood?" So, but hey, long story short, my Uber bill for the day, well, because stupid, but the Uber bill for the day was $550 on a 14-hour trip to New York because we were just all over the place. So what I've learned is don't do that ever again. Stay in a neighborhood.
And just focus. Just be really hyper-focused on that one. And Queens, you can find a lot of places. I mean, if you just went to Queens, there's tons of places. I mean, each of those boroughs, you can find. And then there's Long Island. I mean, that's a whole other animal. So
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I want to get out there, but that is just a whole other animal. And you really have to know, where to go and when to go there and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. So do you cover the Rochester scene now at all, or do you really focus in on Fairport?
I do focus in on Fairport. I know about a week or two ago, we were at Aurora Brewing Company, and they're one of the craft breweries in the town of Parrington. So kind of like when you say Fairport, town of Parrington, they go, hand in hand. And we were there, and we had this popcorn, the Finger Lakes Popcorn Company. And it was a small local business. They're out of Mendon. So not from Fairport, but here they're selling in Fairport, and they also happen to sell in the Redbird Market. And, I had to mention them. Like, they were that good, but I felt like, okay, it is local. It's small. That's really my area. I feel like it will be okay. The other place that we had just encountered was Smithwood Bloody Mary Mix. So they produce their Bloody Mary Mix out of the commissary, which is in the Mercantile building on Main Street. And it's kind of a shared kitchen. So if you want to, make flavored salt or whatever it is, like you have the ability to go to a commercial kitchen. So Smithwood, they were at Redbird with their samples. And so they're right in the area as well, not particularly in Fairport. So there's little bits of time where I might, address things outside of the area, but I do try to remain focused.
Yeah. So do you have, what's your goal? What's your vision, hope for the Instagram account in the next, 2 years?
I feel like my goals maybe will be, I would love 2,000 followers. And then when I get to 2,000, what will be the next goal from there? Where do I want this to go? I'm not really sure. I think I just enjoy going out, meeting people. We've met some great restaurant owners who just have such compelling stories, and you hear about the time and the effort that they put into it and how much they care. Yeah. So that's sort of filling my bucket, to use one of my school terms. So I do get a lot out of that.
That's cool.
But there's just been some incredible spaces that we've gone to and little tidbits that we'll hear about of gossip that's going on or what's maybe heading our way. And it's really cool.
Has it been hard at all to separate yourself from kind of the industry gossip in amongst restaurant owners or anything like that?
We've heard a lot of things, and it just sometimes you just need time to find out if it's really going to come true or not. And we don't like to say a lot because there's discussions being had, contracts not signed yet, slowdowns with remodeling buildings, and so there's so much that you just almost can't get caught up in it because it can turn in 15 different directions.
For sure. Yeah. So what have been the things that you have happened since you started the account where you're like, I wish I didn't do that, or I wish I did this differently?
Okay, this is going to take a minute. I'm trying to think things I would have done differently. Well, I think we did not start telling the restaurants who we were until after I had a conversation with the Merchants Association. I was like, am I going to get in trouble for doing this? No, they actually appreciate what I'm doing. And so there were many months that I didn't say who I was. And I think that had I partnered up sooner or just, introduced myself and said, here's my take, here's my philosophy on, what I'm promoting on Instagram, I think that would have been really helpful. So there was all this time that I'm secretly leaving the sticker and not saying who I was. And I wish I had done that part differently.
Yeah, that's good. I heard I was listening to a podcast by Devour Power out of New York City, and they're huge. They've got millions of followers. And I'm still trying to figure out how they make money though. But anyways, they were talking about their early days. They would just do that. Anytime they would go to a restaurant, they had a business card or a sticker, and they'd say, "Hey, this is who we are," and just started trying to build relationships with restaurant owners that way. That's something I never really did. I wish I had also. I wear the same shirt every day for the last 2 years and pretty much the same hat, so it's hard for people not to
They can identify you
Right.
pretty easily. Yeah.
But for them to be like, eat local New York. But but I do wish I had like been more focused on that in the very beginning. I wish I was not as involved in the restaurant news and information as I am, because that can sometimes really come back to bite you if you're like, just having such great relationships with restaurant owners where the conversation you're talking about those things, or you start to learn, what they're like intimately, what their struggles are with the restaurant. And I'm too much of a helper at times. So, so I'm like, oh, I think I could help you solve that problem. And then next thing you know, you're doing all this stuff that wasting time. But that's kind of where I think it's important. Like, I like the fact that like you're an Instagram account, so many people pop up with, it's like, hey, I've got an Instagram account. I'm going to do this for fun. Now all of a sudden I've got followers. Now I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to try and do that. I'm going to try and do this. And next thing you know, they're blogging and they're doing a YouTube video and they're doing, whatever the case is. And I think it's important to like, hey, I do Instagram.
Yeah, for me to just sort of stay authentic to what was my original purpose here, and not try to twist it around that I'm about making money on this, because then that's my whole thing, is I want to support everyone. But then if it becomes a commercial endeavor, it loses that authenticity. So,
sure. Yeah. All right. Well, tell everybody where they can find you, what your Instagram handle is, and what they can expect.
So on Instagram, I'm Fairport Food and Drink, and I also have a Facebook page. Usually on Wednesdays on Facebook, I'll post my Wednesday week in review. So kind of going over some of the places that we visited over the week.
That's cool.
And then on Instagram, maybe 2-3 times a week, we'll do breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever we happen to be at. Sometimes we go to like 3 places in one day, and then I'll sprinkle it out. Like, I don't want people to know how much I've actually had. So it's, you have to be cautious about that. And I'll have stories like almost every day. But I really feel like so fortunate to have met some of the restaurant owners. Bocatini is like one of them. It's a family-owned business. They've had it for 20 years. And they're still like, the kids are servers. Mom is there, dad's there, who's in the kitchen. The sister is like making bread every day. Like, those stories, you don't realize like all that goes on. You just are sitting at the table thinking about the food that's coming to you. And there's so much, like the 60 to 80 hours a week that they put into it. It's just... You can't even fathom it. I mean, one story I heard recently was at the Underpass, which is in Fairport. Lent, fish fry time, they'll sell like 100 plates of fish fry in one night. All fresh fish. They take care of the oil. They don't use the same oil from day to day. It gets recycled and turned into diesel fuel by some company. Like, all this behind the scenes, that's just really been, part of the story that I enjoy.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, listen, everybody, if you're listening, make sure to go follow the Instagram account or Facebook page. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.